Keir Starmer has pledged to build 1.5 million new homes. Everyone can guess that most of them will be in the form of apartments, and people won't truly own them. The public isn't stupid. They're becoming aware of all these horror stories. If Keir Starmer follows through and sells 1.5 million of these apartments, they might be better suited for Halloween festivals, as they're predicted to be abandoned and desolate. We'll be discussing this issue in detail in today's video, along with reviewing all the latest news from across the country. But first, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel and join our rapidly growing community. The Renters Reform Bill is set to begin its committee stage on October 23rd, 2024. Once that bill becomes law, I believe the apartment market in England and Wales will dry up and collapse. There are two main reasons why someone who's been living frugally and saving might choose to buy an apartment. First is security and protection. They gain more rights when it comes to owning their home. There's no risk of sudden huge rent increases. There's no risk of being evicted abruptly. And there's no need to sign a fixed-term lease. Once you've bought an apartment, if the landlord wants to reclaim the property, they must go through the courts. Simply put, buying an apartment will be safer than ever before. The second reason to buy an apartment, of course, is financial. If you're renting, it's like throwing your money down the drain month after month. If you buy an apartment, your assets will grow each year. If you want to raise more capital, you can sell your apartment lease at a good profit and take the next step up the property ladder. But hold on, right now, it's hard to imagine Keir Starmer helping you grow your wealth by buying an apartment. Last month, the Financial Times (FT) wrote, apartment prices have underperformed every other type of property in the UK over the last 5 years. FT attributes this to several factors. First is the remote working wave, which has driven many people away from major cities. Apartment owners are now in a panic, trying to sell off. This is yet another consequence of the renters' rights movement. Second, the Grenfell Tower fire has had a massive impact. It revealed the poor quality of some existing buildings. Thousands of high-rise residential buildings still haven't been repaired, making them unmortgageable and as a result unsellable. The FT hasn't emphasised building safety, but apartment buyers are gradually realising that they don't actually own anything. All they really have is a temporary ticket to stay, and that ticket has an expiration date. In reality, everyone knows that buying an apartment is basically the same as renting, and of course, they're still under the pressure of the landlord. Those long, complex leases will naturally funnel renters' money straight into the landlord's pockets. There will come a time when tenants will be shocked by this realisation. Some people are fortunate enough not to incur significant extra costs for their apartment. However, in many unfortunate cases, apartment fees double every 10 years or rise according to the RPI, Retail Price Index. This didn't used to be a major issue, but now banks are concerned about flat security and fire safety. As a result, many lenders have started refusing mortgages on apartments with ground rents that double or are tied to the RPI, making them unsellable. Looking deeper into the issue, you can't overlook the costs of maintenance and repairs for apartments. If you're renting short-term, the landlord takes care of that. But from the perspective of a buyer who intends to rent out the apartment, it's a nightmare. The landlord is strictly managed by various licenses and must ensure that all furnishings and the safety of the home are up to standard. What's even more absurd is that landlords don't get to choose their own contractors for repairs and maintenance. They also have to pay for the building's shared insurance. But of course, there's no freedom to choose the insurance company they prefer. There are so many expenses that landlords must cover. They could end up spending thousands of pounds, hundreds of millions of VND on each maintenance cycle. The business model becomes incredibly difficult if you want to buy an apartment for profit. Short-term renters already have fixed rent prices, but buyers intending to rent out the property can't accurately calculate the monthly or yearly costs they'll have to cover. In other words, buying an apartment is akin to losing control over your own bank account. Seeing this, lenders are also starting to steer clear of this risk. How can they be sure that someone taking out a mortgage for an apartment has the ability to keep up with it, especially when so many of the costs are beyond their control? Some banks are beginning to refuse mortgages on lease agreements with high and escalating service charges. Many apartments are becoming unsellable. There are people who want to move to the outskirts and try to mortgage their London apartment to borrow money. They are experts in their fields, with high incomes, and have no dependents to support. Yet, the bank flatly rejected them. The bank left them frustrated, saying the property had no value simply because, as mentioned earlier, the service fees for the apartment were too high. Then there's a friend of mine who's trying to sell a luxury apartment. There's been little interest, but eventually a couple expressed interest in buying. Just when they were about to put down a deposit, they discovered the exorbitant service charges. They considered backing out, so my friend had to grit his teeth and offer to cover the fees for 10 years and even lower the apartment price. Yet, the buyers still walked away, leaving my friend devastated. Some might think this article is overly negative, but take a closer look. People's lives across the country are being put on hold because they can't sell the apartments they've invested their life savings in. They can't take new jobs, get married, start families, or retire. Hundreds of thousands of people are stuck in limbo, and according to the terms of their lease agreements, they can't stop paying the charges the landlord demands out of fear of losing their property. All they have is another lease agreement. That contract could be torn apart, and the apartment buyers could be evicted without any compensation, while the mortgages remain hanging over their heads. Let's take a look at some other notable headlines. Let's be honest, Keir Starmer isn't the type of man to indulge in fantasies or dreams. He's a lawyer through and through, a man of precision, as methodical as an abacus. Sure, he has a soft spot for classical music, especially Beethoven, but his well-known indifference to the arts beyond that is striking. You won't find him with a favourite novel unless it serves him politically, nor will any poem be swirling around in his head. It's just not his thing, and he's not about to fake it. Angela Rayner, on the other hand, isn't interested in such frivolities either, once bluntly saying, "Beautiful means nothing really. This is who they are, and I actually appreciate their straightforwardness. There's nothing worse than someone pretending to be cultured when they're not." Now, could a man like Starmer feel unsettled in his own study? Absolutely. That's actually what makes his personality intriguing. Men like him, stoic, logical, and predictable, are perfect candidates for a good ghost story. Think of the characters in Robert Eichmann's tales, well-meaning but blank, clutching their guidebooks, or the tweed-clad scholars in Mr. James's stories. Even Michelle Paver's *Dark Matter*, perhaps the best English ghost story of this century, is narrated by a physicist. The truth is, except for Hamlet, neurotic characters don't lend themselves well to ghost stories. No one's particularly spooked if an unemployed actor spots Boudica in his bathtub. The real thrill comes from watching a no-nonsense rationalist like Starmer slowly have his solid beliefs eroded night after misty night. What are Keir Starmer's certainties? And who or what haunts this lawyer's mind? A potential clue emerged just last week. It seems Thatcher isn't the only iconic figure to have been tucked away. Elizabeth I, William Shakespeare, Sir Walter Raleigh, and William Gladstone have all mysteriously disappeared from the walls of Downing Street. A Number 10 spokesperson explained that the change of artwork has been long planned, even before the election, and is meant to mark the 125th anniversary of the government art collection. But that explanation doesn't really add up, especially when it comes to the Queen and the playwright. The portrait of Elizabeth I, specifically one of the famous Ditchley pattern paintings, is a standout piece in the collection. You'd think an anniversary celebration would put the spotlight on such a masterpiece, particularly when so much of the rest of the government's art consists of portraits of stout, bewigged men. And as for Shakespeare, his importance seems self-evident. You'd expect that a portrait of the world's most renowned playwright, even if it's an 18th century copy, would be something the government would be eager to display. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, share it with your friends and hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to click the bell so you're always up to date with our latest content. Your support means a lot to us and gives us the motivation to keep creating the content you care about. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.